Good morning, everybody. How are you today?
Good morning.
I don't have anything really prepared, and I'm just going to speak from my heart about some experiences that I've had that have guided me. And I guess if you were trying to put a label on it or things, I would call it turning points of things that lead you down the road to places that you don't expect it would be, but places that turn out to be positive. And I mean, I'm not a really great oral speaker, but I'm going to just say what's in my heart. And I come from a very conservative family. We were raised Roman Catholic. And I mean, spiritualism was not the path that I would ever have thought that I would have been on. But I found through my life events that I've been guided along the way to seek the truth. I mean, yesterday I was sitting in reflection, trying to think of what would I say. And when I asked the spirit world of what should I talk about or what should I say, they tell me to be a witness for the truth. So I'll just give you the truth as, I'm not saying this is the gospel truth, but I'm just saying this is the truth that has happened to me. So I'll just relay a couple of things to you, and I try not to bore you too much. From the earliest times that I could remember as a child, I always felt like I was a little bit different than my brother and my sister. They both grew up to be and became by profession engineers, and they're very logical and everything else. And I was always kind of the odd guy out, and from my earliest memory, I mean, I remember going down to my grandfather's basement and being afraid to go down there. And I mean, I had no idea. And I kept seeing a guy behind this furnace with a mustache. I had no idea. And all I knew is what I was seeing was real to me as a child. And I would tell my mom, I'm afraid to go downstairs because, and they would always tell us, go down to the basement because we're having coffee. And it was every Sunday night, whatever. Go downstairs, and we used to have a television set down there, and we watch TV, my brother and me, whatever. So I would always be afraid to go down there, and I would always see this guy, and I thought it was just my imagination, whatever. And my mother would tell me, you're just making it up, you're dreaming. Well, I come to realize one day my grandfather dug out an old photograph, and it was actually a picture of my great grandfather, and he hung it on the wall, and he has the same name as I do, Stephen. So after that, I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe I really wasn't dreaming. Maybe this really is real, I don't know. But again, that's from a child's perspective. And then I've had some very significant turning points in my life that have guided me down the road. And like I said, I was by profession a school teacher, and I've worked for the Archdiocese of Newark for more than 14 years. So I mean, I was always working in a low job, but I had a conviction of to seek God, to seek the truth, whatever that is. So anyway, growing up and, losing people along the way, it kind of made me question, because every time I had gone to a Catholic mass, I never really felt satisfied. I felt that there was more to life than what we were being told, what we were being shown. And I'm not saying anything bad against Catholicism. I'm just saying that this is just my experience. And I always kind of came out empty. So I'm there's got to be more to this than whatever. And like I said, one of the turning points in my life and growing up, I mean, I've always been around sick people. The lady next door to me had multiple sclerosis, my best friend's mother, and she passed away at 59. And the gentleman across the street from me, his name was Charles Bradley. He was on hemodialysis for 14 years and he passed away. And I remember going to the hospital it was on a Good Friday in 1984, just was coincidental, to say goodbye to him. And then leaving that room and knowing that you're never going to see this guy again, it was a turning point for me. So dealing with death and different things. And I remember, he was making a conscious decision to go off hemodialysis because his body was just breaking down totally. And they kept asking him, do you want to run on the machine? He was like, no, no, no. And then eventually one day I was home in the morning and my father told me that he passed away. So, I mean, all these people in my life that have come and gone, I have chairs in this center with their name on it to mark their spot. And that's how I connect with them sometimes when I'm here. Anyway, so as a teacher for a Catholic school, I had been a fourth grade teacher for 10 years, and I taught all the subjects, including religion and all this other stuff. And one day I had a girl come into my class and she was crying and she's like, my dog died. And I was like, wow, I didn't know what to do with it. I felt really bad. So I sent her to the mother superior, who was the principal of the school. I said, go talk to the sister and see, maybe she'll feel better. And she comes back and she goes, it was almost worse. And I was almost sorry that I did that because um, the sister said to her, well, I'm very sorry, my dear. She goes, but animals don't go to heaven because animals don't have a soul. And to me, that just was so wrong. And I was like really angry when I felt that, because I'm saying to myself, I go, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, everything that's alive, that's energy, has a soul, including animals. And then I've come to realize, well, that was just another turning point for me that was leading me down the road in a different direction. So fast forward to like 2005, my mom passed away, devastated me. My uncles passed away before that, devastated me. And I didn't know what to do with all of this stuff. I have all this like kind of stuff in me, feelings of like, you know, if God is good, like why is God taking all my people away? I didn't really understand it. So life has kind of a way of taking you in a different direction than your work. And I mean, like, I was a school teacher for a number of years, and then I had two children, and then eventually, like, my childcare costs were just exceeding like my income and everything, even though I was always working two jobs. So I kind of like dropped out of teaching for about 7 years, and I was home like caring for my daughter. So I had to have a job, a night job. So I'm looking in the paper, where do I work? So I look and I see this ad for JR Cigars and Paramus. So I meet this woman, Doris Wilderman. And Doris Wilderman comes to this church sometimes. And she told me about this woman. And I'm not going to mention the woman's name, but that's kind of how I got into spiritualism a little bit. And like I said, at a former place, I had met Sharon, who became one of my teachers, one of the important people in my life. I met Carol, both of whom I respect a lot and I love a lot from the bottom of my heart. And then I met this guy who really changed my life. And I had a reading from Bill Collar. I didn't know who the heck Bill Collar was. And he started talking to me. He's like, well, who do you want to talk to today? He goes, I have 5 communicators for you, your grandfather on dad's side and this and that and whatever. So I said, mostly I wanted to talk to my mom. So he talked to me about my mom, and he told me the most, well, first of all, he told me my mother's maiden name, which was Gress. It's like dress, but with the G, Gress. Erna Gress, that was my mom. And he told me my mom's name. He didn't know who she was. You know, I said, how do you know this? He goes, because she's talking to me. And he goes, and she's also explaining it to me more in German. And he goes, he goes, I live in Switzerland. He goes, I understand German. So he goes, actually, the more significant details of my mom's life, because my mom's first language was German. She said that she's explaining it to him in German. So I said, okay, well, that would make sense, because that's how, when my mother would go into like her memory process or think about something, she would talk to you in German and then she would explain to you in English. I don't know. It's kind of like screwed up. I could never really understand that, but that's how she was. So when he told me, I was like, wow, you know, and when he told me her name, I found it like really quite shocking. And then I never saw Bill Collar again at the former place for years. And then, like I said, we continued to take classes with Karen, with Sharon and with Carol. And like I said, not on a consistent basis, but I mean, I would go sometimes on a Tuesday night to a healing circle or whatever. I mean, I never thought, and then I started to go to some of the services there after my mom passed. But again, I just wasn't finding the satisfaction. And from that place, I dropped out. And that's on me. That's not on them. That's just like, I just wasn't finding it. I mean, that's like my MO. When I can't cope with something, or I withdraw, you know, I have a reclusive kind of personality. So I dropped out, and that's on me. And I don't know how it came to be, but I think Sharon was going to do a reading for me. And I was like, okay, well, where will we do the reading? And she's like, well, you could come to my house. I said, come to your house. And she's like, yes. And she spent like an hour and a half with me, and she filled in all the blanks and all the gaps. And I mean, I've had a lot of losses since then, but I'm just saying like this, that spiritualism to me, when I started to read about it, and I started to realize that, you know, some very important people throughout history were spiritualists, like Arthur Conan Doyle, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, I can't really think of all, you know, but I mean, the more I read, the more I said to myself, I go, yeah, there's got to be something more to this than what we're seeing, you know? And then there's dreams. And I mean, I started to have like more and more vivid dreams, and like, I didn't understand what was happening to me. But I realized, you know, like from things that this is like a form of spirit communication, or what we would call like visitation. And then I would start to develop the ability to like hold the energy field of the person I was dreaming about and start communicating now actively with mediumship. But not to digress, but just to go back for a couple of minutes. I mean, I didn't know what inner spiritual center was. We talked about it a little bit. And, I came to some of the services, like I said, because I had like the utmost confidence in Sharon, the utmost confidence in Carol, and I came here for a couple of years and, we would help, like Alex and I were kind of like brothers, from a different mother. But, we were always like together here, like every Sunday we come, make the coffee, and Ron's with us too, maybe we were triplets here in a former life, I don't know. But, and I came here for a couple of years and I never really thought to, we took the classes and everything else. And I started to develop like more things, but I mean, I had selfish reasons because I missed my mom in bereavement. And that's what kind of like drove me in that direction. Like I wanted to have a channel of communication, like even if it was just reality in my mind that would make me feel better. But then I found out kind of like the spirit world kind of turned it around on me and showed me a different way. So, I mean, we took these classes and eventually one day, Alex and I were talking and Sharon we're talking about namings. So I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. I said, I feel like I'm on a spiritual path. So, I mean, we had a naming ceremony and Carol picked out my name from the spirit world, which is Justinian. And I forget what Alex's name was, but Sharon got his name and we had the ceremony. It was really beautiful. But again, I was like kind of on the fringes and I wasn't like really thinking I would ever really go down this road as we are here. I mean, I took the mediumship classes, like I said, because I had selfish reasons, but I never really used it. Anyway, one day, Sharon and Bill Collar came to me and they talked to us about the ministry program. Would we want to become ministers? So I was like, I had to think about that one because I was like, I wasn't really, I mean, I was an adequate teacher, but I've come to realize in my confidence that I'm a really good teacher. I'm just not like too exciting. I'm kind of like boring, but I mean, I care a lot. So, I mean, a lot of my students come back to me later and say, oh, you helped me, or I remember you were nice to me or whatever, I guess it's like what Maya Angelou said, like people remember how you made them feel, whatever. So I said, okay, that's a nice feeling. At least they remembered me that I was a nice guy. Anyway, so I mean, we started to study. So it took a long time for this ministry. And we did a lot of research. We wrote a lot of papers and we had a lot of discussions about death, about life, about, people, how do you communicate with people, how do you get along with people. And I mean, I have to say in the beginning, before I came here, I was kind of like really narrow in scope in my view of people. And I would like, have a very high judgment against them. And I realize now in reflection of like how wrong that it really was, that like having a more open approach is like, and embracing life is much more important. So anyway, on November 5th, 2017, Alex and I became ordained ministers in the church. And then I said, kind of like I'm thinking about it, I was looking at it, I go, well, it's 11,517. So when you add those numbers up, it comes out to 33. And again, I'm no authority in numerology, but I know that 33 is a master number. So I go, there has to be something like in the guiding of that process, like by the spirit world, that it happened on that day. But anyway, it was a very special day for me. And on that day, I wore my grandfather's wedding ring as a symbol of my ministry and my ordination. And so like from that day forward, I always wore it, so I'm wearing it today. So, I mean, it meant a lot to me. And in the development of mediumship, like I said, I always looked for the physical evidence. I mean, besides things that happened in my life, and I realized that I was changing. I'll just talk for like 2 more minutes and then I'll be done. I know I don't want to like drone on too much. But I mean, I went to a funeral of a colleague's grandfather who passed away, and I realized I was changing because I'm sitting in the lobby, waiting for this other woman to show up because we're going to just go in and view the body and sign the book and leave. And I asked this guy, well, let me practice what we're learning in these classes, So he said, could you please tell me your name, sir? I had no idea what his name was and what you did for an occupation. So he said, my name is Joe, and I was a garbage man in New York City. So I said, okay, I kept that thought to myself. So then at the end of the funeral service, when we were leaving or the viewing, I asked the girl whose grandfather it was, I said, could you just please tell me what your grandfather's first name was and what he do for a living? She said, his name was Joe and he worked for the New York City Department of Sanitation. So I go, okay, this stuff must be working, So it kind of like, changed me. And like I said, in my own losses, like I always look for the evidence, and sometimes physical phenomena I seek as evidence. Like I said, when my mom passed away one day, I was sleeping in my bed there were no flowers in my house. And I woke up, under my pillow, there was like a chrysanthemum, a white chrysanthemum. I know that was a significant thing in my mother's wedding bouquet. It was a physical flower. It was real, and there were no flowers in my house. So he said, where did it come from? Must have come from the spirit world. I call it a miracle, When my mother-in-law passed away, I didn't have the best relationship with her, but the next day I went back at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and she's buried in Tapan Cemetery, which is like a big flat open field, and the stones are flat. And I'm looking, and the sun's not quite up yet, but I mean, it's, light enough that you could see, but it looks like there's a flashlight. So I'm walking through the field, right as a freshly dug grave, it looks like there's a light coming up from the ground. So I kept this thought to myself too. And I was like, I must be crazy. I must be imagining it, just like when I was a kid. And then we're sitting in a class, and Bill Collar starts talking about corona effect, like where the body of a freshly buried person comes up through the ground, the energy radiating. So I go, okay, that must have been what I've seen. So, I mean, things that I have seen with my own eyes, I believe, and that's like what can, confirm my belief of the path that I'm on was correct. And just finishing these points, I mean, I have several people in the spirit world now that I call my spirit team, one of whom is my Aunt Helen. I guess that she was talking to me yesterday, and she said to me, to be a witness for the truth, that's the purpose of your life. And so I guess, I'll try to do the best that I can to be a witness for the truth, however you conceive God in my life, and try to like make the world a better place. And like I said, with Bill Collar, when he ordained me, and Sharon, when they ordained me, Bill Collar said to me, he goes, your job is to provide service to the spirit world, service to people, and service to animals. And then when he said animals, that's the one that really gave me the hook, So I was like, I thank everybody here for listening to me today. And I said, I wish you peace and love and joy in your life. And don't think about death as a bad thing. It's just a continuation of the life process. I think like John Lennon described it best. He said, it's kind of like getting out of one car door and opening the door of another car and getting in and going on away. But I mean, I'm a firm believer of spiritualism and a firm believer of like life everlasting, that life goes on. And like I said, sometimes physical phenomena happens in my house. When we're talking about my mom, sometimes we're working on class, like we've been working on the Zoom for the past couple of years. I mean, I always have a cup of coffee, I have a teaspoon on my coffee or my dining room table. And sometimes just for a brief moment, the coffee spoon rises. And it's happened at least a half a dozen times now. So I know it's not a coincidence, it's nothing I'm doing. There was no earthquake. There's no other way to explain it, except I'm going, are you here? And and the coffee spoon goes up. So I go, I guess she's here, So with that, I'll just conclude and say thank you very much for listening to me today.